The next 2 hours passed in a blur of activity as the palace security team worked to contain what was becoming a major security crisis. Marcus found himself at the center of an investigation that seemed to grow more complex by the minute. In Security Office 3, the woman from the library sat calmly while investigators examined her camera and questioned her about her background. She had identified herself as Elena Vasquez, a freelance journalist from Madrid who specialized in investigating government corruption. Her press credentials appeared to be legitimate, though that didn't explain how she had gained access to the palace. "She's not talking about how she got inside," Sarah reported to Marcus when he checked on the questioning. "But her story about being a journalist seems to check out. We found articles she's written exposing corruption in several European governments." Meanwhile, the computer intrusion continued to puzzle the technical team. Despite their best efforts, they couldn't stop the data theft or identify its source. Whoever was accessing the system had covered their tracks expertly and seemed to know exactly what files to target. Marcus stood in the corridor between the two investigations, feeling like he was caught between two versions of reality. On one side was his duty to protect palace security and maintain order. On the other was a growing suspicion that the security he was protecting might be hiding something significant. His phone buzzed with a text message from his wife asking if he would be home late. Marcus realized that what had started as a routine evening shift was turning into something that might change his entire understanding of his job. He texted back that he would probably be very late. Chief Williams approached him with a grim expression. "We need to talk privately," she said, gesturing toward her office. Once they were alone, she closed the door and turned to face him. "Marcus, what I'm about to tell you stays in this room until we figure out how to handle it." "Understood. We've identified the source of the computer intrusion. The access is coming from the private secretary's own computer terminal." Marcus felt the implications hit him immediately. "You mean either the private secretary is responsible, or someone is using his credentials?" "Exactly. And here's the problem. The private secretary is currently in Switzerland at a diplomatic conference. He's been there for 3 days, with dozens of witnesses to confirm his location. So someone else is using his access codes. That's what we thought initially. But the access patterns suggest someone who knows the system intimately. This isn't just someone who stole a password. This person knows exactly where to look for specific types of documents and how to navigate the filing systems efficiently." Marcus sat down heavily in one of the chairs facing Chief Williams's desk. "You're suggesting it's another high-level staff member. I'm saying we have to consider that possibility. And if that's the case, this isn't just a security breach. It's a betrayal from someone with significant access and authority." Before Marcus could respond, there was a knock on the office door. Sarah entered looking flustered. "Chief, we have a problem. Elena Vasquez is asking to speak with whoever is in charge of the investigation. She says she has information about the computer intrusion." Chief Williams and Marcus exchanged glances. "Bring her here," the chief said. A few minutes later, Elena Vasquez sat across from them, still wearing her rumpled staff uniform, but looking more composed than she had during the chase through the palace corridors. "You said you had information about the computer breach," Chief Williams began. Elena nodded. "Before I was caught in the library, I noticed something unusual. There was someone else in the administrative wing who didn't belong there." "What do you mean?" Marcus asked. "I had been watching the palace for several weeks, learning the staff patterns and security routines. Tonight, when I entered through the service entrance, I saw someone coming out of the administrative offices who I had never seen during my surveillance." "Can you describe this person?" "Middle-aged man, well-dressed, carrying a briefcase. He moved like someone who belonged there, but I knew he wasn't part of the regular night staff. And he was in a hurry." Chief Williams leaned forward. "What time was this?" "About an hour before the library incident. Maybe 10 o'clock. Marcus realized that timeline matched perfectly with when the computer intrusion had begun. "Did you get a good look at his face?" "Good enough. I'm trained to observe and remember details. If you showed me photographs of palace staff, I could probably identify him." Chief Williams stood up. "We'll arrange that immediately. But first, I need to understand something. How did you gain access to the palace in the first place?" Elena hesitated for a moment, then seemed to make a decision. "I had help from someone on the inside. Someone who believed that the information I was looking for needed to be exposed." The room fell silent. Marcus felt like they were standing at the edge of a precipice, about to discover truths that would change everything. Who? Chief Williams asked quietly. I can't reveal that person's identity. They took a significant risk to help me, and they don't deserve to face consequences for doing what they thought was right. Elena, Marcus said, using her first name deliberately. If someone on our staff helped you, they might also be connected to the computer breach. We need to know who it was. She shook her head firmly. The person who helped me doesn't have computer access at that level. They work in housekeeping and were just able to get me inside the building. What happened with the computers is separate. Chief Williams walked to her window, staring out at the palace grounds where dawn was beginning to break. Marcus realized they had been dealing with this crisis all night. Here's what we're going to do, the chief said finally. Elena, you're going to look at staff photos and identify the man you saw. If he's connected to the computer breach, we need to find him immediately. And in exchange? Elena asked. In exchange, we'll examine the photographs you took in the library. If they show evidence of actual wrongdoing, we'll make sure the appropriate authorities investigate. Marcus was surprised by this offer. It seemed like Chief Williams was taking Elena's accusations seriously rather than simply treating her as a criminal. Elena considered the proposal for a moment. I want something else too. I want protection for the person who helped me get inside. They don't deserve to be punished for trying to expose corruption. That depends on what we find, Chief Williams replied. If the allegations prove to be unfounded, they'll face consequences for helping an intruder. If there's substance to your claims, we'll consider their motives. Fair enough. For the next hour, Elena reviewed photographs of palace staff, while technicians worked to trace the computer breach. Marcus found himself in the unusual position of hoping that both investigations would succeed, even though he wasn't sure what the consequences would be. At 7 in the morning, Elena identified the man she had seen leaving the administrative wing. It was David Morrison, the Deputy Foreign Affairs Liaison, a respected staff member with 15 years of palace service and high-level security clearance. That's definitely him, Elena said, pointing to Morrison's official photograph. Same build, same way of carrying himself. Chief Williams immediately dispatched security to Morrison's home address, but they found the house empty with signs that he had left hastily. His car was missing, and neighbors reported seeing him load suitcases into his vehicle around midnight. Meanwhile, examination of Elena's photographs revealed copies of documents that appeared to show unauthorized financial agreements between the royal household and several foreign corporations. The agreements suggested that palace funds had been used for private investments that benefited only a small circle of insiders. Marcus sat in Chief Williams's office as the sun rose over the palace grounds, feeling like his world had shifted fundamentally. The investigation had revealed not just security breaches, but evidence of actual corruption that raised serious questions about the institution he had sworn to protect. What happens now, he asked. Chief Williams was studying the documents Elena had photographed, her expression grave. Now we have to make some very difficult decisions. These documents, if authentic, represent serious violations of public trust. But confirming their authenticity and determining the full scope of what's been happening will take time. And Elena? Elena Vasquez will be released pending further investigation. Her methods were illegal, but her evidence appears to be legitimate. The prosecutors will have to decide how to balance those factors. Marcus looked out the window at the palace he had protected for 12 years. And us? How do we continue doing our jobs knowing what we know now? Chief Williams was quiet for a long moment. We do our jobs by protecting what the monarchy should represent, not necessarily what it has become. If there's corruption, we help root it out. If there are people who have betrayed the public trust, we help expose them. Even if that means protecting the person who broke in to find the evidence. Especially then, as the morning shift arrived and the night shift finally ended, Marcus walked through the palace corridors one more time. The ancient walls and portraits looked the same, but he saw them differently now. Instead of symbols of noble tradition, they seemed like guardians of secrets that perhaps shouldn't have been kept. His phone buzzed with another text from his wife. This time he called her directly. I'm finally coming home, he said when she answered. How was your night? She asked. Marcus looked around the corridor where this had all begun, thinking about the woman who had been photographing documents in the library and the staff member who had betrayed his trust to steal computer files. It was the kind of night that changes everything, he said finally. What do you mean? I mean, I learned that protecting something sometimes means being willing to question it, and that doing the right thing isn't always the same as following orders. As Marcus left the palace that morning, he knew that Elena Vasquez's emergency call had set in motion events that would ultimately strengthen the institution he served, even if it meant acknowledging its flaws. The Royal Guard's response to her intrusion had become something much more important than catching a trespasser. It had become a test of whether the monarchy could face the truth about itself and emerge better for it. 6 months later, the investigation initiated by that night's events would result in significant reforms, new transparency requirements, and the prosecution of several officials who had abused their positions. Elena Vasquez would eventually receive a journalism award for her investigation, though she would always insist that the real heroes were the security personnel who chose truth over comfortable loyalty. Marcus would continue serving as a royal guard, but with a deeper understanding of what protection really meant. Sometimes the greatest service you could provide was ensuring that those you protected remained worthy of protection. Marcus stood in the doorway, blocking the woman's only exit while trying to catch his breath. The dishwashing area was dimly lit by emergency lighting, creating an almost surreal atmosphere for their confrontation. Steam still rose from the industrial dishwashers that had been running their final cycle of the evening. "There's nowhere to go," Marcus said, his voice steady despite his heavy breathing. "Put your hands where I can see them, and don't make any sudden movements." The woman studied him carefully, her eyes calculating. She was smaller than Marcus, but had proven she was quick and resourceful. Her staff uniform was rumpled from the chase, and he could see the small camera she had been using tucked into her jacket pocket. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," she said, speaking English with a slight accent that Marcus couldn't immediately identify. "This is bigger than you think." "Then, explain it to me," Marcus replied, keeping his hand near his radio in case he needed backup quickly. "Start by telling me who you are and what you were doing in the Royal Library." The woman shook her head, a bitter smile crossing her face. "My name won't matter to you, but what I found in those books, that could change everything." Marcus heard footsteps in the corridor behind him and knew his backup was arriving. Within moments, 2 other guards appeared at his shoulder, their presence adding to the pressure on the trapped woman. "Sarah Chun, kitchen security," one of the new guards announced quietly to Marcus. "James Rodriguez, main floor," said the other. Both guards were younger than Marcus, but well-trained and alert. "We've secured the other exits," Sarah reported. "Control room says the entire kitchen level is locked down." Marcus nodded, keeping his eyes on the woman. "Good. Now let's find out what this is really about." The woman looked at the 3 guards facing her and seemed to realize that her situation was hopeless. But instead of surrendering, she reached into her jacket pocket. Marcus tensed, ready to react if she pulled out a weapon. Instead, she withdrew the small camera and held it up where they could see it. "You want to know what this is about? This camera contains proof that your royal family has been lying to the entire kingdom for decades." "What kind of proof?" Marcus asked, though his training told him not to engage in extended conversation with a suspect. Something about her confidence made him curious. Documents that show secret agreements with foreign governments. Treaties that were never disclosed to Parliament. Financial arrangements that would shock the public if they knew about them. The woman's voice grew more passionate as she spoke. "I'm not a criminal. I'm a journalist trying to expose the truth." Sarah stepped forward slightly. "Even if that were true, you're still trespassing and attempting to steal protected documents. The methods matter as much as the motives." The woman laughed harshly. "Protected documents? Protected from whom?" "From the people who have a right to know what their government is doing in their name." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He had always assumed that his job was simply to protect the royal family and maintain palace security. The idea that they might be hiding significant secrets had never seriously occurred to him. But the woman's conviction was unsettling. What kind of agreements? He found himself asking, despite knowing he shouldn't be encouraging her. Trade deals that benefit only a few wealthy families while ordinary citizens struggle. Military cooperation agreements that put the kingdom at risk. Financial arrangements that... The woman stopped speaking and looked at Marcus more carefully. "You really don't know, do you? You've been guarding them for years, and You have no idea what they're really doing. James, the younger guard, shifted impatiently. We should take her to the security office and let the investigators handle this. Standing here debating politics isn't our job. Marcus knew James was right, but something about the situation bothered him. If the woman was simply a criminal or a foreign spy, why was she trying to convince them rather than looking for ways to escape? And why did her accusations sound so specific? Show me the camera, Marcus said suddenly. Marcus, Sarah warned. We shouldn't be looking at potentially classified material without proper authorization. But Marcus had made a decision. If she's lying, we'll know immediately. If she's telling the truth. He trailed off, not sure how to finish that sentence. The woman hesitated, then slowly extended the camera toward him. The photos I took tonight are just the beginning. There are entire archives that the public has never seen. As Marcus reached for the camera, his radio crackled to life. Thompson, this is Control. What's your status? We have additional complications developing. Marcus pressed the radio button. Suspect is contained in the kitchen dish area. What kind of complications? We've detected unauthorized access to the palace computer systems. Someone has been downloading files from the administrative servers. This might be coordinated. The woman's eyes widened slightly, and Marcus realized she was genuinely surprised by this news. If she had been part of a coordinated attack, she would have expected the computer intrusion. I don't know anything about computer files, she said quickly. I'm only interested in the historical documents. Someone else must be. She stopped speaking as the implications hit all of them. If there were two separate intrusions happening simultaneously, it meant the palace security had been compromised more seriously than anyone had realized. Marcus made a quick decision. Sarah, take her to Security Office 3 and start the preliminary questioning. James, come with me. We need to check on the computer situation. Wait. The woman called out as Sarah moved to escort her away. The person accessing the computers, they might be looking for the same information I am. But they're not working with me. Marcus paused at the doorway. What makes you so sure? Because if I had computer access, I wouldn't have needed to photograph books in the library. Think about it. Her logic was sound, which made Marcus even more uncomfortable. Two separate people had managed to breach palace security on the same night, apparently looking for similar information. That suggested either incredible coincidence or a much larger problem than a single intruder. As Sarah led the woman away, Marcus and James headed back through the palace corridors toward the administrative wing where the computer servers were located. The halls that had seemed peaceful just an hour ago now felt potentially threatening. How many other people might be moving through the palace without authorization? Do you think she was telling the truth? James asked as they walked quickly toward the elevators. I don't know, Marcus replied honestly. But we're going to find out. The elevator ride to the third floor seemed to take forever. Marcus found himself thinking about his 12 years of service to the royal family. He had always taken pride in protecting them, believing that he was serving something important and noble. The woman's accusations had planted seeds of doubt that he didn't want to acknowledge. When they reached the administrative wing, they found it buzzing with activity. Computer technicians were working frantically at several workstations, and Marcus could see Chief Security Officer Patricia Williams directing operations from the main server room. Thompson, Chief Williams called out when she saw him. Glad you're here. We've got a serious situation. Marcus and James approached the server room, where multiple screens displayed code and file directories that meant nothing to Marcus, but clearly concerned the technical staff. What exactly are we dealing with? Marcus asked. Someone gained access to our internal network about 2 hours ago, Chief Williams explained. They've been systematically copying files from various departments, diplomatic correspondence, financial records, security protocols. The intrusion is sophisticated, suggesting either an insider with high-level access or a very skilled external hacker. Have you identified the source? That's the problem. The access is coming from inside the palace network, but we can't pinpoint exactly where. Either someone is using stolen credentials, or, she paused, clearly uncomfortable with the implication, or someone with legitimate access is responsible. Marcus finished. Chief Williams nodded grimly. We're checking all staff who have been in the building tonight and reviewing their access logs. But this level of breach suggests knowledge that goes beyond what most employees would have. Marcus thought about the woman in the library and her claims about secret documents. If the computer intrusion was related to her investigation, it suggested a level of organization that made him deeply uneasy. "Chief," he said carefully, "what if the person accessing the computers was looking for the same information the woman in the library was after? What kind of information was she after?" Marcus hesitated, knowing that repeating the woman's accusations might sound like he was supporting her claims. She said she was a journalist investigating secret government agreements, treaties, and financial arrangements that weren't disclosed publicly. Chief Williams's expression grew even more serious. "Did she show you any evidence of these alleged agreements?" "She had photographs, but we didn't examine them before taking her into custody." "We need to see those photographs immediately. If someone is specifically targeting sensitive diplomatic or financial records, we need to understand the scope of what they might have accessed." As they spoke, one of the technicians called out from his workstation. "Chief Williams, I think I found something." The intruder was specifically accessing files from the private secretary's office and the Foreign Affairs Liaison Department. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. Those were exactly the departments that would handle the kind of sensitive agreements the woman had mentioned. The coincidence was becoming too significant to ignore. "How much data was copied?" Chief Williams asked. "Hundreds of files, years' worth of correspondence and documents. If this information gets out..." The technician didn't finish his sentence, but the implication was clear. Marcus realized that his quiet night shift had turned into something that could potentially affect the stability of the entire kingdom. Whether the woman in custody was a criminal or a legitimate journalist, someone was clearly determined to expose secrets that powerful people had worked hard to keep hidden. The question now was whether he and his colleagues were protecting the palace from a threat, or whether they were part of a system that was itself the problem. Captain Marcus Thompson had been walking the same palace corridors for 12 years, but tonight felt different. The ancient stone walls seemed to whisper secrets as his polished boots echoed against the marble floors. At 42, Marcus had seen everything the royal household could throw at him, from diplomatic incidents to kitchen fires, but something in the air made his instincts sharp. The grandfather clock in the east wing chimed 11 times as Marcus completed his routine patrol. The palace was settling into its evening quiet, with most staff retired for the night, and the royal family in their private quarters. Only the night shift remained, a skeleton crew of guards, housekeepers, and security personnel who kept watch while the kingdom slept. Marcus adjusted his radio on his belt and checked his watch. His next checkpoint was the library corridor, where centuries of royal history lined the walls in leather-bound volumes. The hallway stretched before him, dimly lit by ornate sconces that cast dancing shadows on the portraits of long-dead kings and queens. As he approached the library entrance, Marcus noticed something odd. The door, which should have been locked at this hour, stood slightly ajar. A thin line of light leaked from the gap, unusual since the library had motion sensor lighting that should have turned off hours ago. He paused, hand instinctively moving to his radio. Before he could call it in, a sound made him freeze. It was faint but unmistakable, the soft scraping of furniture being moved across the wooden floor inside the library. Marcus had been trained for situations like this, but his heart still quickened. The royal library contained priceless manuscripts, first editions, and historical documents that thieves would kill for. He approached the door carefully, keeping his footsteps silent on the thick carpet. Through the crack, he could see movement inside. Someone was definitely there, someone who shouldn't be. Marcus reached for his radio to call for backup, but hesitated. If this was a false alarm, if it turned out to be a staff member working late with permission, he would look foolish. But if it was real, the scraping sound came again, followed by what sounded like papers being shuffled. Marcus made his decision. He would investigate first, then call for backup if needed. He pushed the radio button twice, sending a silent signal to the control room that meant possible situation, standing by. Slowly, Marcus pushed the library door open just enough to peer inside. The main reading room was bathed in the glow of several desk lamps that someone had turned on. Bookcases towered from floor to ceiling, creating shadowy alcoves where anyone could hide. Near the far wall, Marcus could see a figure hunched over the rare books section, carefully removing volumes from their shelves. The person wore dark clothing and moved with practiced efficiency, clearly familiar with the library's layout. Marcus couldn't make out facial features from his position, but the intruder's methodical approach suggested this wasn't a random break-in. This person knew exactly what they were looking for. Marcus felt his training kick in. He needed to get closer to assess the threat level and identify the intruder before taking action. The library had multiple exits, and if he spooked the person too early, they might escape through the service corridors that connected to the kitchen wing. He slipped inside the library, using the massive bookcases as cover. The thick carpet muffled his footsteps as he moved from shadow to shadow, getting closer to the intruder. As he crept forward, Marcus could hear the person muttering under their breath, speaking in what sounded like a foreign language. When he was about 20 feet away, Marcus got a clear view of the intruder. It was a woman, probably in her 30s, with short dark hair and wearing what looked like a staff uniform. She had several books open on the desk and was photographing pages with a small camera. This wasn't a random theft, this was espionage. Marcus realized he was looking at something much more serious than a simple break-in. The woman was systematically photographing documents from the royal archives, likely looking for sensitive information about state affairs, diplomatic communications, or security protocols. The implications hit him like a cold wave. He reached for his radio to call for immediate backup, but as he moved, his elbow bumped against a book cart behind him. The cart moved slightly, causing a metal bookmark to clatter to the floor. The sound echoed through the quiet library like a gunshot. The woman's head snapped up, her eyes locking with Marcus's across the room. For a moment, they stared at each other in frozen silence. Then, everything happened at once. The woman slammed the books shut and grabbed her camera, while Marcus lunged forward shouting security. "Stop right there." But she was already moving, darting toward the far exit with surprising speed. Marcus gave chase, his radio crackling to life as the control room responded to the commotion. The woman reached the exit door and yanked it open, but Marcus was only steps behind her. As she ran into the corridor, he got on the radio and breathlessly reported, "Control, this is Thompson. We have a code yellow in the East Library. Female suspect fleeing toward the kitchen wing. I'm in pursuit. Need immediate backup at all exits." The chase was on, and Marcus knew that catching this woman was crucial. Whatever she had been photographing could potentially compromise national security or put the royal family at risk. His years of training and experience told him that this was no ordinary night at the palace. As they ran through the corridors, their footsteps echoing off the ancient walls, Marcus couldn't help but wonder how the woman had gotten inside in the first place. The palace security was supposed to be impenetrable, with multiple checkpoints and surveillance systems. Yet here she was, dressed as staff and clearly familiar with the building's layout. The woman turned a corner toward the service stairs that led down to the kitchen complex. Marcus knew those stairs well. They were narrow and steep, leading to a maze of storage rooms, prep kitchens, and utility corridors that connected to various parts of the palace. If she reached that area, she could disappear into dozens of hiding spots or find another way out of the building. Marcus pushed himself harder, his breathing becoming labored, but his determination unwavering. In his 12 years as a palace guard, he had never faced a situation quite like this. The woman moved like someone who had studied the palace layout extensively, taking turns and choosing paths that suggested intimate knowledge of the building's secrets. As they approached the service stairs, Marcus could hear other guards responding to his call. Radio chatter filled the air as security teams moved to seal off potential escape routes. The woman reached the stairway and began descending rapidly, taking the steps two at a time. Marcus followed, his hand on the rail to keep his balance as he pursued her down the narrow staircase. The lighting was dimmer here, with industrial fixtures that cast harsh shadows on the concrete walls. This part of the palace was purely functional, lacking the ornate decorations of the upper floors. At the bottom of the stairs, the woman paused for just a moment, looking left and right to choose her route. That hesitation gave Marcus the chance he needed. He was close enough now to see the sweat on her forehead and the determined set of her jaw. She was breathing hard but showed no signs of giving up. She chose to go left, toward the main kitchen area. Marcus wondered if she had an exit strategy planned or if she was simply running blindly now that her mission had been compromised. Either way, He wasn't going to let her escape with whatever information she had gathered. The kitchen corridor stretched ahead of them, lined with storage rooms and prep areas that were dark and quiet at this hour. The woman's footsteps echoed off the tile floors as she ran, with Marcus maintaining his pursuit just yards behind her. The sound of their chase seemed to fill the entire lower level of the palace. As they ran past the main kitchen, Marcus caught a glimpse of movement in his peripheral vision. Other guards were converging on the area, responding to his radio call, and moving to cut off the woman's escape routes. The net was closing, but the chase wasn't over yet. The woman suddenly veered right, pushing through a set of swinging doors that led to the dishwashing area. Marcus followed, finding himself in a large room filled with industrial sinks, dishwashing machines, and stacks of plates and serving equipment. The room smelled of soap and cleaning chemicals, and the floor was slightly wet from the evening's cleanup. In the center of the room, the woman finally stopped running. She turned to face Marcus, her chest heaving from exertion, her eyes darting around the room looking for another escape route. But Marcus could see that she was trapped. The dishwashing area had only one entrance, and he was standing in it.